fought the enemies of humanity across 1,000 worlds.
Welcome to Gamescom 2025, and more importantly, welcome to the Imperium of Mankind. I'm Jesse Gomez, joined here with the lovely Matt Purslow. And Matt, you just got to play a little bit of Dawn of War 4. What sort of RTS is it?
So, as you know, Jesse, the Dawn of War series, which is this kind of Warhammer 40,000 real-time strategy game, been around for a long time, but it's been absent for a long time. In that absence, a lot of people have been maybe not just requesting, but demanding a return to the original concept, that kind of command and conquer style, build bases, generate troops, go out there with massive armies, capture points, all of that. That is basically exactly what we have here. So it's not developed by Relic. It is not the original team that have come back. This is King Art Games. You may know Iron Harvest, which is a World War kind of World War II adjacent, but with mechs game. It's those guys. That game felt very sort of similar to the sort of stuff that Relic did.
There's some shared DNA there with sort of aesthetics and stuff, right?
So you can see why they have been chosen as kind of a team to take Dawn of War forward. And yeah, they've heard loud and clear what the fans have been asking for, and so they have gone for the Dawn of War 1 style.
We all know that Warhammer has a wide range of factions. What's actually playable in Dawn of War 4?
If you're going to do a Dawn of War 1 style RTS and kind of continue on from that, you've got to have Space Marines. I mean, any Warhammer project has got to have Space Marines. So you've got the Blood Ravens are back. These are the faction that was invented for Dawn of War. So it's a very specific chapter of the Space Marines there. Of course, you've also got to have Orks. You can't have a Dawn of War game without Orks.
Boys are back in town, finally.
Joining them, the Necrons are here. So the Necrons were in the Dark Crusades expansion pack for the first game, and had kind of been hinted that they would have come back to Dawn of War in one way or another, and this new studio has decided to continue with that. The new faction that we've got is one that I am very excited about because I personally collect them on the tabletop, is the Adeptus Mechanicus. These are the kind of Martian engineers of the Imperium of Man. Lots of kind of weird cyborg elements. Unfortunately, at Gamescom, I didn't get to see those guys in action. Did get to see at least two of the other ones.
With the two factions that you saw, from my understanding, you played as the Space Marines, right? Going up against the Orks. Now, what I want to know, do they feel distinctly unique from each other, or are we sort of dealing with like maybe a palette swap situation here?
Absolutely not. So the original Dawn of War was pretty good at this. I'd say now, bear in mind it's been a long time since I've played Dawn of War because the series has been absent for a very long time, and I've not quite had a chance to play the definitive remaster of one yet. But what I felt here was two very, very distinct kind of factions. Space Marines, very few units at a time. Like a squad of Space Marines is 5 men. Some of the more elite units only come with 3 men in a squad, and so they are big, heavy. Their bolters obviously literally shoot explosive ammunition, so they are absolutely wicked at range. The Orks come in like twice the squad numbers. You know, there's like 10 boys absolutely charging at you, and so they've got more of kind of like the overwhelming force kind of angle, and that kind of comes in different ways. Sort of like one of the things that I really noticed, I guess, is a benefit. There's a lot more Ork units on the tabletop that can now be turned into video game versions, and so they've now got like Squig Riders with Orks on the back with giant like poles of explosives on the end, and they're basically cavalry charging across the battlefields. So that up against kind of like your Space Marine units that are obviously like holding the line. I only played as Space Marines, but I reckon it looks like the Orks are pretty wicked to play as.
I can imagine there's plenty of chaos, especially when you've got a small little squad of Space Marines going up against countless hordes of Orks. But in terms of what you played at Gamescom 2025, what was the scenario? What was the mission? Was it a more traditional like capture and hold scenario, or were there varied objectives?
So this was, I'm not entirely sure if this mission was bespoke for Gamescom or whether it's a mission from the campaign. What it certainly was is a classic sort of scenario of, at the beginning, it is about building a base. So the Space Marines kind of drop potted into Imperial Guard Astra Militarum kind of area where they were being overwhelmed by the Orks. So I had to build kind of like a classic kind of base situation, get the first line of defense held, and then the mission kind of evolved into having different objectives. So it was take the first Ork base, then the Orks started building massive mechs, and so there were 3 kind of factories around the map that I had to go and destroy, and then it was push on to the Orks major base, but at that point the Necrons decided to turn up.
Of course, it's just a party for everyone.
Yeah, so kind of like they got a Necron monolith that turned up, and they got all of their walkers and standard kind of Necron units, and so deal with that distraction before going back to the Orks. So yeah, very traditional Dawn of War 1 in that it's very capture point based.
But it sounds somewhat overwhelming with the sort of forces you are dealing with.
Oh yeah, so the one thing that I think it's actually got, like, if this mission is representative kind of like the power curve of the general campaign missions, I think it's got that really good sense of, at the start, I found myself really overwhelmed, and you're just trying to build your base, and you're desperately getting like your Space Marine production up and running, and the Orks keep attacking you, and it's like every time I get like units down, they're being whittled away. But there was like a tip in the PowerPoint where once I'd built enough of the base that allowed me to bring in the Redemptor Dreadnought.
So this is what I wanted to talk about. Obviously, that was like the tip in the battle that allowed you to actually progress. But what I want to know is, what was your sort of unit composition? What actually allowed you to take the edge in battle? What were you actually using?
So at the start, you obviously get kind of very standard kind of Space Marine units, all taken from the new, well, I say new, relatively new Primaris style Space Marines. And so you've got your intercessors and you've got your assault intercessors, so that's standard ranged rifle guys and guys with pistols and chainswords. But as you obviously expand your base, you start getting your building that allows you to build elites. And so Terminators, Blade Guard veterans, so your Blade Guard, if you played Space Marine 2, you'll know that as the Bulwark class. So you can get a load of those guys in to really storm in with their shields and swords. But it was the Redemptor Dreadnought that really tipped it for me. Maybe a little bit overpowered, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's maybe a slight balance to it, but I think part of the joy of getting the Dreadnought in is how powerful it is.
I can imagine at that point through the mission, you earned that Dreadnought. You wanted to stomp through the enemies.
Absolutely, and obviously the Dreadnought, for anybody that doesn't know, a Dreadnought is an almost dead Space Marine in a giant walking sarcophagus that is armed with a flamethrower, a giant Gatling gun, and also has missile launchers on the top of it.
Everything you need for a balanced Orc breakfast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So once I got him, he became kind of like my vanguard unit, like absolutely charging into the fray, supported by these kind of like 15, 20 Space Marines I got around him. And at that point, I felt like I was really able to go in and conquer the Orc bases, steal back their resources, which obviously then fuels my base, and able to start drop podding Space Marines in.
But you mentioned as well that you're dealing not only with Orcs, but Necrons. Now, when you were facing those, was there sort of any like mixed battles where the Orcs were taking on the Necrons and you were taking on the Necrons themselves? Was there anything like that?
So not in the scenario I had, because basically what it was is that the Necrons suddenly materialized in the east, whereas most of the Orcs were in the west. I'd be really fascinated to see how that happens. What I will say is that the Imperial Guard, the Astra Militarum, are on the field, and when you were pushing forward, when you were taking kind of the control points and moving the front line ahead, the Astra Militarum would then start sending their troops in, and so you'd see them fighting as well.
You took charge, you went ahead, and obviously, I'd assume you completed the mission. How are you feeling overall about Dawn of War 4?
Pretty good. Yeah, it's like, I think the thing for me is, as someone that like really loves the lore of Warhammer, what I'm looking for is those kind of like stories. You know, I want like a Black Library book coming to life in an RTS scenario. Their animation team has done such a good job of capturing what a Space Marine and an Orc should look like when they're fighting, particularly when the Dreadnought and the Terminators came up. Even though it doesn't seem like it's got controller support, it is all mouse and keyboard because it's obviously a PC RTS, but I could feel the rumble of like that assault cannon.
You want to hear the theater of war. You want to hear the Space Marines bolters. You want to hear the Orcs screams. I can imagine it must have sounded great.
Yeah, like they've got all of the, and I think a lot of Warhammer games have been very good at this, particularly kind of like Space Marine recently, but it has the full vibe of it. You know, it's got that, it's a grimdark future that's also a little bit silly in its own way, and like the thunder of the bolters, the absolute smash. Everybody obviously speaks in British accents. The Orcs are all from the East End of London, and like really good like announcer voices and stuff like that. I think from what I can see, they've got the package down, at least within the scenario that I played. What I'm really looking forward to now is that this is a campaign that has over 70 missions in it, split across for the 4 different factions. They each have their own cutscenes, each have their own CGI cinematics, and obviously each fights in their own very distinct ways. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Necrons fight, because they apparently have like this weird Matrix kind of element where they spread across the battlefields. And the Adeptus Mechanicus, I don't know how they're going to work yet, but they are one of my favorite factions from the tabletop, so I want to see how all of their like weird cyborg elements come into it. I've got a good feeling about this. It felt good.
I myself am looking forward just to sort of like the toy box element of just sort of grabbing Space Marines, Orcs, Necrons, and whoever else they might include and just smashing them together and just seeing who wins. But for now, Dawn of War 4 sounds pretty amazing, but for even more from the world of the Imperium of Mankind, Warhammer, and everything else, you're already in the right place at Gamescom 2025 with IGN.